3, 2. All right. Hi, guys. Today we are talking to the acting municipal manager of the Matatiele Local Municipality, Dr Vuyo Mlokothi. We want to share with him his views about the challenges and the achievements since taking the reins as the acting municipal manager of the Matatiele Local Municipality. Dr. Vuyo Mlokothi, welcome to the Informal Newspaper. Firstly, when you were told that you are coming to Matatiele by the MEC we assume there are targets of some of the issues that you had to you come and deal with in this municipality. Can you tell us about the exact things that you were sent to deal with here in this municipality?
Well, I think that the letter that was given to me when I was sent to Matatiele had very specific tasks. And one of those was to ensure that I come to facilitate the negotiations with the municipality and Dr Nakin so that there can be an amicable solution to the negotiations, number one. Number two, I was asked to begin to ensure that the municipality does get stabilized, because already there was an observation that the organization was in turmoil, and I think there were fears about some kind of disturbance in the organization. Obvious number three was to continue to manage the organization such that it performs and delivers services to communities and spends in terms of the budget and manage that throughout. So a lot of the responsibilities are drawn from legislation, which includes the overall management of the institution. So those are the central tasks that was given for the first 3 months. Obviously, they change with the extension of time. So that's the brief that was given.
Okay. Yeah, let's touch on this issue, Dr. Nakin's issue. You facilitated the negotiations. How far are we today?
Well, the negotiations with Dr. Nakin are completed. We began the process with his lawyer, and the municipal team was represented by myself, the attorneys, as well as Salga representation. We negotiated with his team. We must have said about 2 times to discuss the contents of the settlement agreement. And we then resolved that, and all parties signed. We parted ways. There was a settlement amount of money that was agreed to, which was to be paid over to him, subject to certain conditions. One of those things was that we were to ensure that we honor the tax obligations of SARS on the payment that was going to be given to him. So that was done. As far as you know, then, with the parties that signed the agreement, that was accepted, and he was then released from the institution.
But now we hear that is going back to court, seemingly he's not satisfied.
I heard about that as well, but I've not seen any court papers.
Yes.
I read about this thing in the newspaper sometime, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember. But I have not been furnished with any papers from his lawyers, number one. Number two is that his lawyer did write to the municipality on the 30th of April, questioning the manner in which he was paid. Because in their view, they thought that he was supposed to be paid the full 4.5 million.
Yes.
And our view was that the negotiations had a condition that was saying that we can't escape the tax contribution and tax payment. And therefore, we had to pay 2 million rands as per the tax directive over to SARS, and then paid over to him 2.5. So in our view, there was no breach of the agreement, because we paid him what was due to him less tax payment. So nothing was retained by the municipality. The 2 million rands itself was paid over to the tax agents as required by law. And it was done as per the tax directive from SARS. And there's nothing untoward with regard to that. We did that, and in our view, we settled it. So I'm saying that in the letter they wrote to us on the 30th of April, we did respond in detail to his lawyers to indicate that as far as we're concerned, there's no breach of the agreement. And since then, there's not been any other communication between his lawyers and ourselves. So from May, June, and up to where we are, there's not been communication. It is my assumption, therefore, that our response was satisfactory to his lawyers, because nothing different came back to us that said they disagree with our assessment of the settlement, how it was paid.
Okay, so according to the institution and according to you as the accounting officer of this institution, Dr. Nakin's issue is finished and clear now.
As far as I am concerned, there's nothing that has not been honored in terms of agreement.
Okay.
Because the agreement was 4.5, 2 million rands paid to SARS, 2.5 paid to him, including anything that was listed in the agreement. So as far as I know, and as far as the legal team is concerned, nothing is being owed to Nakin.
So we are looking forward to a new manager now.
We're looking forward to appoint the new manager now. Hence, the council took a decision to advertise that position, and the closing date for the advert was 15th of June. We're now proceeding to do the shortlist. Sorry, the shortlisting, yes, and then we'll do the adverts. So the interview. Sorry.
Okay, let's talk about another issue now, which is kindly trying to bring another instability in the institution, which is the security company. Tell us about what is happening about this issue.
The KSA security company had a contract with the municipality, which officially ended on the night of the 19th of June. And this was in terms of the discussion we had with KSA. Remember that they've always been on a month-to-month arrangement until we finish the procurement of the new company. But on the discussions we had, we then agreed to officialize the termination of their contract, or the end of their contract. And that letter was given to them last week because they wanted a written commitment on our part that there is not going to be a further extension, which we agreed. And there is no contest by KSA with regard to the end of their contract as a company. So the company is not actually upset or unhappy or contesting the end of their contract. In fact, they're actually happy that the contract has ended because they were of the view that they have been here for far too long. That's number one. The new company assumed their duties as per the letter of appointment on the 20th, on Saturday at 6 a.m. in the morning. Now, both KSA as well as Ubilo are not at war as companies. And both companies are not at war with the municipality. But what we do have is employees of KSA who feel that they must be absorbed by the new company called Ubilo. All of them, the full 88. And I think their point of departure is actually wrong. Because nothing in the tender document stipulates that a company that will be appointed is supposed to be absorbing employees of an outgoing company. Nothing of the sort. All that normally occurs is negotiations between the outgoing company and the new company to see how many can be taken for the new company. But there is no legal obligation on the part of the new company to take those employees. I had a meeting with them then on the 17th of June. A day after, I was told that they had a strike or a protest that they showed around the premises here. So I met them in the council chamber here. First, I met the KSA director, Mr. Kumalo, to understand exactly what's happening with regard to the employees. And we agreed that we'll pay to KSA all outstanding monies. The balance to be paid to them was 2.9 million rands, which was paid to them on Friday. Two, we agreed that they will disarm their guards and take every other guns that they were in possession of the guards during that week, which was before Friday. Three, we also agreed that they will ensure that they assist with the negotiations with the new company to see if the new company can absorb the employees. And that was done by Mr. Kumalo and Ubilo Security, Mr. Malek, last week. In terms of the expectation then on our part was that in the morning of the 20th, there should have been an easy transition from the old company to the new company. What then surprised us is that when the company came in offering to employ 50% of the employees of KSA, the guards themselves demanded that all of them must be employed. the full 88. Now, that is something that Ubilo could not accept, because their offer of 50%, they thought in their view would be well received by the guards. Now, when the guards demanded that the full set must be absorbed, then that became a problem for him, to a point where we had a stalemate with the government. Now, having observed the conduct of the guards, and having realized that our negotiations were not bearing any fruit, we then applied for interdict. So we went to the Pietermaritzburg High Court yesterday to apply for interdict, which was granted at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that interdict court order is now being effected today. Okay. So the sheriff is now moving through the sites today to serve that court order to all the guards, and we've spoken to the police. I had a meeting with the police this morning in the police station. They are now enforcing that to ensure that all the other guards that belong to KSA vacate the premises, and the new guards from Ubilo assume their duties.
Okay. Now, there are other issues, and one of the issues with the council chamber, I know maybe you did get some information about the council chambers. We hear that the municipality is also in court about this issue as a council chamber. I don't know whether it's true, where you guys are claiming some monies from the construction company that was there before was paid wrongly. Can you clarify that issue?
No, we're not in court. We're actually going to court to enforce the arbitration award. Okay. The municipality a few years ago had appointed a company called Lube Construction, which defaulted with regard to the construction of the council chamber. Council then sought remedies with regard to that matter, and an award was given in favor of the municipality, which was then challenged by Lube Construction. And that review of that award was then adjudicated on in April 2020, which then directed that the company must pay the municipality 22 million rands as a result of its own failures as arising from the construction that was supposed to have taken place years ago. So we are now going to court not to argue with the company. We're going to court to ask the High Court to enforce the arbitration award, which forces the company to pay 22 million rands to the municipality, as was given in the initial award in the first place.
Okay. Actually,
no.
We know that you have budgeted for the continuation of the construction. When do you think the council chambers are going to be finished?
Well, in terms of the discussions we've had with the principal construction company and the consulting engineers, you'll realize that with the lockdown, we had about 3 months delay with regard to construction. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we then had a meeting with the principal company and the engineering company to say that work can now resume. The work has now resumed. We have agreed to pay the variation orders that do not exceed 20% of what they're claiming, and that was approved by Council on the 28th of May, and Council has given us a go-ahead to begin to pay any other variation orders that we've received, provided they don't go above 20%. But in addition, Council has actually directed that we must conduct a forensic investigation with regard to any other ills that were done in the last number of years, which contributed to the numerous variation orders that themselves sometimes are questionable in terms of how they were done or processed. But for those where we see value added and we see no questions around the payment, those are being paid. So work has now commenced on site, but in the agreement with the companies, they said they need to be given an additional 3 months for them to complete the work after the assumption of their construction on site. So we're expecting that that 3 months period is going to be one that now rounds off anything of STEM.
Okay. Now, we know that there are service delivery projects that the municipality is doing in town, like the roads and the electrification, the lights. People were always complaining about lights in town. How far are you with that?
I must say that the council, by the end of May, adopted a budget that identified a number of areas that had projects that were either not progressing well or that need to be started as per the MIG allocation, as well as INEP allocation. So those projects are addressing those kind of service delivery shortfalls in the municipality. The INEP allocation, which we have received, is targeting a number of villages and wards where there has not been attention given to electrification. I must just add by saying that we unfortunately got a letter on the 15th from the National Department of Energy indicating that they are cutting 20 million rands from what was allocated initially from the municipality, which was 52 million rands. So the allocation has now gone down by 20 million rands, which means that there is going to be a need for us to revisit certain villages and projects, not because of our own making, primarily because of the national department's attention to the pandemic, which has drawn a lot of money from a number of departments, causing government to begin to revisit the allocations done. But in terms of the projects throughout the municipality, whether it is electrification, whether it is road, whether it is the streets that you see around here, even the villages, that is being attended to. I must just add to say that we had also had a discussion where we thought, let's take the entire plant and have it refurbished of the municipality. So we took that to Bells in Pietermaritzburg for that to be done, and I think it's going to cost us in the range of 400,000 rands for the repairs of every other machinery we have. Because we think that that machinery is going to be utilized for the repair of the rural roads. And we don't want to hire private companies. We think that that machinery must come in and be utilized. It can't be staying idling. So in relation to service delivery, that kind of project, or those projects actually go ahead in full scale.
What do you find as a reason maybe that is derailing service delivery, especially to the rural areas?
Well, I think that, local government is a very complex animal. With the advent of the wall-to-wall municipalities, you have almost close to 80% of residents of a municipality residing in the rural communities. And that happens throughout the country. And the residents of the rural communities are not paying rates, are not paying for refuse collection, are not paying for stormwater, are not paying for any street lighting. But in return, they're expecting that the municipality must provide roads, it must provide lights, it must provide any other thing that must be done in those areas. Unlike the urban dwellers. The urban dwellers, through their rates, they can demand service because they pay. So that kind of narrative contributes towards delayed service provision in a number of rural communities, because the formula that we have across the country is taken from the rich to the poor, from the haves to the have-nots. So that is not going to be an easy thing to begin to resolve across the country. So the model we have has contributed towards having a lot of these kind of backlogs. But I must say that they're being addressed, because water provision across the country has now been hastened. The municipality district at a level has actually mastered that art as well. So there's great progress in service delivery, but I must say that the model itself of providing services to communities that in turn don't pay certainly contributes towards the diminishing fiscal base. But the other thing is about the inability of national government to fund 100% of the functions. Now, most municipal functions we perform are underfunded. Now, if you read Schedule 4 and 5 of the Constitution, Part B, and you read those listed functions in that Constitution, most of the functions we perform are actually underfunded. Now, you are expected to provide this service to this magnitude, but with less budget, and that's a crisis we have. So the kind of deficiencies then are multiple in that regard.
Now, you talked about COVID-19. Have you received anything from that 500 billion as the municipality?
Yes, we have. Remember that the municipalities across the country have been given a certain amount of money for them. So we received about 754,000 rands for the current financial year, which is going to take care of the work that must be done during COVID. We've been assured that in the new financial year, an equal amount of money may be made available as well. It's a very small amount of money, I must say, because it's basically dealing with buying the items that are required for health and safety, your sanitizers, your masks, your disinfectation equipment that is required. So there's a portion that we've received.
Okay.
But I think in addition, the municipality budgeted 1 million rands in addition for the new financial year in relation to capex that may be required on COVID activities. So I think we've cushioned ourselves not to focus on the location of national government only, but also to depend on the own resources. But the district obviously has its own budget that it has been given, which contributes towards water services and rural health activities as well. So there's multiple sources. The district will perform its functions on COVID-19 related matters, around water and environmental health, and ourselves in relation to what has been given to us, and then in addition, what we have is own funding from CAPEX.
Okay, one of your offices has been closed because of the COVID-19 confirmed case. What steps have you taken? And people are complaining here in town saying, this office has been closed for quite a long time. We need our workers to be up to date, but they are not up to date up to now. What have you done?
Well, people must understand that the closure of offices was as a result of the lockdown. That's the first thing. So in the various phases of the lockdown, there were a number of directives given to a number of institutions across the country to close and only allow essential services to be performed. So we did exactly that ourselves. So for all the non-essential functions, we could not actually have employees go there. That's the first thing. So the general public would have complained about not getting access, but they must understand that we were complying with national directives. That's the first thing. But with the easing of the lockdown, new demands came in, because when the lockdown was eased, it then required that you must disinfect offices, must deep clean them, provide sanitizers, provide gloves, provide face masks, and ensure that the work environment is conducive to enable for social distancing. And those matters delayed the return of the employees back to the office, because you have to be ready as an employer that you're not going to expose your employees to this kind of unhealthy work environment. And it's not a very easy thing, because the municipality does not have sufficient workstations and spaces for work in the offices themselves, hence the construction initiative. Now, to ask employees to come back when you're not ready, it should not very helpful. Now, in the midst of that, we then had this kind of case that we are referring to, where a positive case was identified, which then required of us, even though we're now on the verge of opening again, to close once more. Now, that's a requirement in terms of the protocol, in terms of the health department, that once a case is identified, go back there, close offices, disinfect, sanitize, test, screen where you can. Now, what you did yesterday was to, one, issue a circular to all employees, to inform them about the case that was picked up, number one. Two, also advise them to still maintain social distancing, but to encourage employees to go for testing for all those that would have come into contact with the employee that was identified as positive. And we actually outlined a number of measures there. We have encouraged a number of employees to go for those with medical aids, to go to their medical doctors, to go to their own medical centers and actually get the testing to be done. We also had a discussion with the health department for them to come to our rescue where we are failing, we don't have the necessary resources to come and test and conduct some kind of mass testing with the country employees we have. Now, we obviously didn't get a very quick response from health, but we had to move quickly with regard to closure of offices. Now, until the offices are ready for reopening, we can't actually risk the lives of the employees and bring them back. We must ensure that the environment is conducive. Hence, I didn't want to even have this interview in the office. So that office is too small for a group of 7 individuals. No matter how much we pray, but you know, when you pray for the unseen, it's quite even problematic. You pray for the virus. But there are other steps that are taken in relation to the case that identified.
So for now, you cannot say the office is going to open such and such a day.
No, we can't. Remember that the health department, as the custodian of the measures to be taken, must, together with the labor department, must come and satisfy themselves as in when we've done everything required in terms of protocol that we are ready for reopening. And when they have confirmed, we can actually reopen. So we can't on our own determine that we are ready until we know that we've done this kind of mass screening or mass testing where it is applicable, and that the area is suitable itself, and that there's not going to be a resurgence of the cases in the environment because of our failures. So we can't put a date until all the steps have been taken.
Okay. Talk to the people of Matatiele about this COVID-19. It seems it's wreaking havoc in our towns, and we've got a number of isolation places here. Talk to them about this.
Look, I must say that the COVID-19 is a scary virus. It is a deadly disease. And as the President says, we're fighting an invisible enemy. What I do observe, which is unfortunate, is that our people in the municipality don't seem to understand the need for them to social distance, for them to begin to ensure that the masks are there at all times, that they don't reuse the mask unwashed, that they ensure that there is not this abundance and movement of human beings across. People actually roam around, they go to town for no apparent reason. And the instruction is that stay at home, wash your hands, go out to town only when there's a need. I mean, I don't come to the office here when there's no need. I also avoid coming to the office here. You get a sense that there's so much mass education that must be taking place. People don't realize that we now have a new normal, changed altogether from what we thought was the normal environment. And I think that kind of narrative must sink in our minds, and it must become part of our lifeblood, part of our behavior every day. And I think until citizens get to understand the disastrous nature of this kind of disease, they will not be able to appreciate the importance of them staying at home. So we must encourage our citizens to begin to stay at home, ensure that they comply with the regulations. And the easing down of the levels does not suggest a decline in numbers. If you look at the easing down announcements every time, it is accompanied by a drastic increase in the numbers themselves. The numbers are going up, skyrocketing, shooting up. So every day there's ultimately, in every province, in every town, deaths announced, cases identified. So we're now moving towards the peak, because the projections in terms of the medical advisors of the minister nationally, they are saying as we approach the end of June, we go to July, we're going to see a number of deaths, a number of people that are identified as positive. And it is the more important now for people to stay home, comply with the regulations.
Last but not least, can you say to the people of Matat, since you've been here, you've dealt with the issues that are frustrating them, now they can sit and relax and visit municipality and be able to get what they want from the municipality. Can you say the systems are now smooth running?
No executive officer, no CEO of any company can make the statement that I've reached a stage where I think everybody's happy. It's impossible. Because when you get into an environment, you are seized with few tasks that we have, which are the immediate responsibilities. But there's a series of other tasks that have not been attended to. But I must say that in terms of level of stability, accessibility, our care to the public, and our responsiveness to communication that gets sent, and how people actually are being attended to when they complain, that has improved significantly, I must say. And our interaction with our communities and our appreciation for them to realize that this is a center of government that must serve communities, that has improved. But we really can't get to a stage where we think that there's high degree of satisfaction until we've conducted a survey and tested their views. Obviously, there's going to be people that are going to be permanently aggrieved. Now, we'll find those individuals. But my observation is that the kind of response we get suggests that, yes, we're not where we should have been, we should be as a municipality. But we do see some kind of progress and some level of stability. So it's going to be an ongoing task and a challenge that we must manage from time to time.
How is your relationship with the councillors, the councillors in general here? We hear some are saying, this guy must go now.
Well, they have not told me that I must go, but my relationship is very professional and very good. And so if they think that I must go, I'm free to leave. Okay. But I must just say that they have not been told. In any way, I'm not going to be here. I'm not supposed to be here for life. I have a specific term here, and I'm supposed to leave by end of August. So I have a month remaining. So those who wish that I must leave, they must be patient for the next 30 days.
How is Matat? Is it nice? Can you stay here for a long time?
Well, I have never stayed in any institution where I've been an accounting officer for a long time. Where I've been appointed as a CEO of institutions, the period throughout my life has now been more than 5 years. Yeah. So if time comes for me to leave, I'll leave immediately. It's always very good. So I always think that I have a mission to accomplish, deliver that, and then disappear.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.